All right, Saagar, what are you looking at?
Well, as a former White House correspondent, I've never really understood why the public glamorized it so much. The truth is, it's really not a great place to do journalism. You mostly follow the president around like a trained monkey, you transcribe what he says, and then you try to get officials on the inside of the building to leak to you if possible. The best that you can really hope for is an interview with the president, which itself is an annoying negotiated process. I think the reason why, although it's synonymous with journalism, is just because of television, and simply the White House press briefing. It's where I would, of course, often challenge Sarah Sanders or Donald Trump when given the opportunity. It's also where a lot of these people make their careers. How they ask the questions quite literally determines policy, because the White House is only going to pay attention to the stuff that it gets scrutiny for. It's a bad systemic problem. The White House is accountable only to journalists that it picks. Thus, those journalists and what they pick becomes even more important. And that is why I read a recent profile on White House correspondents with a lot of interest in the wake of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. That really gives the game away. Politico magazine wrote, as if it was a bad thing, that there was a rise and a fall of a star White House correspondent. The star example that they gave, and no, I'm not kidding, was Jim Acosta, who used his carnival barking fame to score a weekend CNN show that currently has less ratings than a day when we don't even post clips here on Breaking Points. But the point was made that if you want to be a somebody in media, a great way to do it was to appear as if you were adversarial to Trump and his administration on television. But now, with Biden, all of that has been taken away. One journalist, who was a coward and was speaking anonymously, told Politico, quote, "Jen Psaki is very good at her job, which is unfortunate." They add, "The work is a lot less rewarding because you're no longer saving democracy from Sean Spicer and his Men's Warehouse suit. Jawing with Jen just makes you look like an asshole." There it is. It was rewarding when the person was on TV. Now it's not rewarding because the liberal media boss thinks it looks bad to challenge the administration to its face. That, in a nutshell, is the whole ballgame. By the way, I actually support the raucous days of the Trump admin for everybody, because it really was free and open. Now, the journalists have no actual incentive in order to challenge the administration, which means, in effect, they are accountable to absolutely nobody in broader media. I've already explained here. The seating chart is rigged by the establishment press. The entire thing is fake. Where they privately admit the game is rigged, and ironically enough, they actually admit the path to success within that story, noting that the only actual star of the White House press briefing room these days is Peter Doocy of Fox News. Now look, obviously, Fox has an incentive in order to challenge President Biden on the Hunter Biden laptop story, migrants, or any of the other myriad subjects, but the point stands. His journalism stands out because he is willing to ask about the stuff that nobody else is asking about, which then leads to coverage here on our show or the wider internet and contributing to many viral moments. It is easy to be a star reporter today for the internet. The problem is that the incentives within the system that make it so being a star and challenging Biden or his paid propagandists would be exactly the way to get fired or marginalized in your job in the establishment media structure. One element that especially rankled me in the story about the White House correspondents was the supposition that the Biden era is boring. Now, that is superficially true. He doesn't tweet about Mika Brzezinski having a bad facelift or Stormy Daniels calling her a horse face. But we're literally living through some of the craziest political times in modern memory. We have crazy inflation, massive gas crisis. We're possibly on the precipice of a major economic downturn. We have a major political realignment. Roe versus Wade was revealed as possibly overturned today. How the different parties are sorting out, of course. We have the Great Resignation. We have the end of the global pandemic. There is the first European war since the end of World War II. All of the stories I just listed require nuance, and more importantly, except for abortion, they don't really track onto the culture war or the everyday drama that Washington runs on. Now, Crystal and I built our business on that from the very beginning. We do segments far ahead of their time just to make sure we have the research in case something pops, or we do it because we just think it's important. The most clicked on or viewed on segments are often ones that matter superficially for that day, but that doesn't mean that it's all that you need to know. It's much harder to tell those stories, and it requires a funding model like ours that relies on subscriptions and direct support rather than just filling time in between commercial breaks. And by saying the quiet part out loud throughout the article, they show us that in reality, there is only one way to change this. The whole thing just has to be burned to the ground. Cable news as it exists, and as it always will exist, is not supported to deliver you good journalism. The structure itself is poison, and in the current rigged system where the cable news companies get the preferential seats in the White House briefing room and command immense attention by the White House, there's no matter how much they shrink in size when they still command an incredible amount of attention from the politicos that set the agenda. The entire thing has just got to go, and it's going to take a hell of a lot of money and effort and time. Look, of course we are trying to do some of it here, but we cannot do that alone. Just like cable news, an entire new ecosystem needs to rise up from the ashes and make it so that the only way for people who want attention is to get it is to align with their ability to get attention while actually pressuring the White House. It's supply and it's demand, and the current supply-side system only rewards sycophancy and irrelevancy. A new one can reward better topics. To give you a perfect example, YouTube just rolled out a new feature where you can see some of the top topics that your audience is searching for in the aggregate. Some of the expected stuff is there for our channel, like Elon Musk. But guess what? Number one for the show, the housing market. We've tried our best to cover it. But really, think about that. The conditions of your life are not reflected in the press, and thus, they are ignored by the leaders. When is the last time you even heard a question about that in the briefing room? And until you do, we are going to see even more of a disconnect. My only faith is that things this fake can only go so long before they break. I think the housing one is a perfect example. I mean, look at that.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.